This video is sponsored by Primal Collectibles. Hey guys, Jay here. Welcome to Models Memories Weekly, episode 162. Models Memories is a show about nothing that is filmed in front of a live studio audience. This is a show where I talk about my painting, modeling, and working experiences from the week. Now you might be thinking to yourself, Jay, you put out 3 videos a week. How could I possibly have more to say? Well, I do, and here goes. This week, Games Workshop retconned the silly Space Wolves 30k helmets. They came out with the Battle Force, and I got a ton of miniatures painted. But speaking of a ton of miniatures, this video is sponsored by Primal Collectibles. Have you ever been playing Dungeons & Dragons or Hero Quest with your friends and thought, if only I had some more miniatures here to really show off my painting skills, or I really need a miniature to show the specific thing happening in the game? Well, Primal Collectibles is here to give you the variety you crave. This April, all first-time subscribers to the Legend tier of Primal Collectibles My Mini Factory Tribes or Patreon will receive a bundle of miniature goodness. This includes their whole Master of Dungeon Quest base pack, perfect for proxying your games of Hero Quest. It includes your classic D&D adventuring party, a big gargoyle, a classic skelly, and other dungeon goodies to help you flesh out your miniature dungeon rooms. And the complete ice and elf-themed expansion boxes. The ice box contains barbarians, a dwarf, and snow monsters like a yeti. In the elf box, you'll find elf heroes, warriors, an ogre, a wolf, and even more. The bundle also includes their complete Heroes of the Blade box, a wide range of sculpted heroes for your Hero Quest or D&D adventures. You'll also receive an exclusive April miniature of Barbarian Jegard and Anya, a Barbarian Babe. But that's not all, you also get the welcome pack that's available for all new subscribers. In total, that's 100 miniature STLs for just $10. That's 100 32mm high quality miniatures for just 10 cents each. This is a great deal to get your hands on a ton of proxy models, or if you're looking to paint something different, follow the link in the description to sign up on My Mini Factory Tribes, or if you prefer, Patreon. I think everybody will remember the infamous Space Wolf 30k heads, the doggo heads. These ruled the internet for like a week. It was the funniest looking thing, very like Dinobots or Transformers, just like actual anthropomorphic dog helmets. There's something to them. They're kind of cool, but not at all 40k. I mean, they have ears. It's like the streamer headset that actually has like the cat ears on the top of the headset. They're absolutely hilarious. They vanished about a year ago, and now Games Workshop has made some proper Mark 6 beakie helmets that actually look super solid. Honestly, they're Space Wolfy, but they're also like, you could totally use them for Raven Guard or for like a custom chapter or for anything. They just look really good. I like the really big like fluting on the mask of each of the beakie like pointed nose faces. I think it looks really, really sharp. But the old ones, you can still get the old ones like here and there on eBay. And I do see them from time to time on Space Wolf models, because on 40k Space Wolves, they actually look fine. There is a pair of heads that look a little bit like that in the old, I think it's the Grey Hunters box. And there's something to them. Like Space Wolves in 40k are just a hodgepodge of different pelts and skins and trophies and tokens. And so, and like little furry foxtails, I guess wolf tails, like hanging off of their belt and off of their like different decorations. So 40k, they actually look all right. In 30k, attached to the classic Mark 6 like beakie armor, they look hilarious. They look so weird. And in 30k, there's a lot of Space Marine chapters that are the most violent, the most aggressive, but like the Space Wolves are the Emperor's executioners. They are violence incarnate. They are indestructible, unstoppable rage machines. And they're so cute with your Widow Doggo helmets. Oh, yes, you are. I love the old helmets. I totally get why they did not last long. They really didn't. I bet they weren't a huge seller because I bet most people didn't really want that for their Space Wolf army. But I like them. I kind of like them a lot. Especially if you wanted to do like an anime-inspired Space Marine chapter, or if you wanted to do some weird custom or a furry chapter. There is, I think I saw it somewhere on like Pinterest that somebody made like an uwu anime-inspired Space Marine army, and it was pretty great. I feel like these helmets would work really well, especially if you wanted to like differentiate Phobos from your normal Mark 10 Tacticus armor. But yeah, I just thought that was funny that Games Workshop very quietly retired the old doggo helmet and then introduced just some really darn good looking Mark 6 helmets. Honestly, I like that they have just like a gold hat. I think that that's a really, really good look, especially for the old style, the more medieval style beakie helmets. Really like them. I wish Games Workshop would make a pack of beakie helmets for just Primaris Space Marines. You can only get them in very specific places. I think one comes in the Stern Guard Veterans box, and two come if you get two if you buy a Raven Guard's upgrade frame for Primaris, and then that's it. That is like it for getting beakie helmets on Primaris models that are officially Primaris. The only difference is a very subtle change to the ears, and they're ever so slightly smaller than the old helmets that you would get from like a Tactical Space Marine box. It's the only difference between Primaris and classic Space Marines. It's also kind of hilarious to think that they super increased the size of Primaris, but they actually did have to shrink the helmets just a little bit to make them look right. Like the old Space Marine heads were so big that they're just way too big, even on a proportional body. But yeah, I like the new heads a lot. I also like the old helmets, but I also love memes. So it's, yeah. I don't think a ton of gamers were gluing those to their miniatures, and I bet Games Workshop had a giant pallet of them at Games Workshop HQ, and they're like, okay, no more cute helmets. Let's just make cool, functional, reasonable helmets from now on. But speaking of cool and functional and reasonable, Games Workshop has shown off the new Tau Combat Patrol. And the new Combat Patrols have been very hit or miss. Like, I feel like some of the Combat Patrols have kind of been through an up and down where they were pretty cool when they first came out and they were replaced to start collectings because you got a proper amount of models. Before you would buy them and it's like one drop pod and a squad of 10 tactical marines. And you're like, it's not really an army. Now the Combat Patrols are kind of an army, and my favorite are the ones that really are an army. And the new Tau one, I feel like is an army in a box. If Santa left this under the tree for me, I would be very satisfied. It would probably take me the entire day, if not the Christmas week, of putting together these miniatures. In the box, you get Breachers, Fire Warriors, a Commander, an Enforcer, Battlesuit, and a Devilfish. I like the inclusion of the Devilfish. Basic transports are always a little bit of a pain to purchase because, if you got some cash burning a hole in your pocket, you want something cool. You want Blade Guard veterans. You want like Squig Hog Riders. You want like those cool elite units where you just read the data sheet and you're like, hell yeah, I want to crump some stuff on the battlefield with this. But then it's like, but I should buy a battle. I should buy a truck. I should buy a Devilfish. I should buy a Rhino because utility and moving my models across the battlefield, maybe capturing a secondary objective here and there. Like, they're not that much fun, but if you get them in a discount box, then it's great. It's like, okay, I bought the things that I really want, and then it came with the Devilfish. So I did like the old Tau box too. I think it was also a nice army in a box. You got the Ghost Keel Battlesuit, one of the coolest miniatures Games Workshop makes. You got Fire Warriors, Stealth Suits, the Cadra Fireblade, and the old as dirt plastic ethereal model. I think though that the new Tau Battle Force or Combat Patrol is a worthy successor and actually looks like a really, really cool box that somebody could very reasonably want multiples of, which has not happened in a while with Combat Patrol. You shouldn't necessarily go spending all of your money on many, many Combat Patrol boxes, but if it kind of works out that like, okay, I want to start a Tau army, probably good to get a couple of Devilfish, few squads of Breachers and Fire Warriors. Can't have enough commanders in the Cold Star armor. Like, these are all super solid units that you could definitely want multiples of. And what I kind of love is it flies in the face of how bad the Dark Angels Combat Patrol was. The Dark Angels Combat Patrol is a bummer. Especially because their old Combat Patrol was probably one of the most popular Games Workshop has ever made. It came with the Inceptors, which is like a Rockstar Space Marine unit right now. It came with a Redemptor Dreadnought, also kind of a Rockstar Space Marine unit. And it came with I think 5 Intercessors and a Librarian. Like, boom, perfect box. To most people who are buying it probably weren't Dark Angels players, because it's just super solid Space Marine units for any faction. But yeah, the new one doesn't make any sense. You've got Commander or Captain and Gravis armor, which is no one really runs that unit. And not to say that any unit that's not performing well in game shouldn't be something that people buy or want, but they don't really want it. And it just doesn't even work well in that box because you get Blade Guard veterans. Blade Guard veterans can't get attached to Captain and Gravis armor, so you have to run them separately in your games until you get something that can be attached. And if you want to attach something to a Gravis unit, it's probably certainly going to be a Apothecary Biologus. That guy is super good for attaching to units because the big heavy Gravis units want to be shooting. They don't necessarily want to be fighting. There's something to be said for attaching him to, like, what are the Primaris names? Aggressors. There's something to aggressors because they have double power fist on each guy, so there's something to attaching him to those, and they're okay in game, but yeah, also just getting a flat 10 intercessors, and then you only get 5 plasma guys, the hell blasters. It's just nothing. And they didn't even include any actual Dark Angels things in there. Like, I get why they didn't let you take the Dark Angels Dark Trio, the 3 guys who follow around Azrael. Inner Circle Companions. Those guys would have been a great inclusion in the box because they're just a really cool thing only meant for the Dark Angels. But no, you don't get anything. The only thing you get specific to the Dark Angels in the Combat Patrol is you get the Dark Angels upgrade frame, which is fine. Also, you know what? Put Terminators in there because in the Dark Angels upgrade frame, you get the Plasma Blast Gun, which you can put only on Dark Angels Terminators. That would have been really cool. Although I guess you can't do that because Terminators come in the generic Space Marine Start Collecting box. So it all just works out to Dark Angel. You don't get anything cool in Dark Angel Z if you get the Combat Patrol, which is really, really disappointing and nowhere near as good as some of the others we've been getting, like the Orc Combat Patrol. If you were on the fence about getting into Beast Snagas, you got a big Orc army and you're like, there's now this brand new thing called Beast Snaga, which is like anti-vehicle boys. But I don't know if I want to collect things that are like boys and things that are like bikers and things that are like war bosses when I've already got all of this stuff. This box, the Combat Patrol, is all Beast Snagas. You get 2 squads of Beast Snaga boys, you get a Beast Boss, you get the Squig Hog Riders. And so if you're like, I want to get the Beast Snagas all in one go for a discount, this is a really good box. I guess the trouble is it is just Beast Snagas. So if you're like, I want to start an Orc army, but I really want boys, trucks, Gretchen, knobs, and like just boys, like then this box isn't really doing it for Orc players. But I don't know, Orcs are kind of a horde army and a little bit more of an expensive army because you need so many units. So it would be nice to have almost 2 Combat Patrols, one that's like classic Orc units and one that's Beast Snaga units. But for any existing Orc players or anybody who even has like a copy of Assault on Black Reach, that old Start Collecting box for 40k, this Combat Patrol will synergize really nicely with it. I think you do need some Beast Snagas in an Orc army just because it's really fun that they are actually an anti-vehicle unit without just being Melt-A-Gun or Las Cannon carrying like vehicles. And anti-vehicle is a really tough thing for a lot of armies. And for Orcs who have garbage shooting pretty much across the board, it's really nice to have an anti-vehicle unit that works in close combat. Like basically the Beast Snagas, they get a ton of attacks, low strength, like strength 5, strength 6, a little bit of strength 7 on some of the character models, but they have anti-vehicle 4-up. So you always have a 50-50 of getting those attacks off or like of causing those wounds on vehicles in close combat, which is, it's really fun. And also a lot of vehicles are really hard to like dodge oncoming attacks. Like sometimes with infantry, you can hide them behind buildings, or sometimes you even get like a move, shoot, move, or like a reactionary movement. Vehicles are big and stuck where they are. So on turn 2, when you call that WOG, it is not a big deal to get into close combat with the vehicles and then literally punch a tank to death. It's kind of great. So I'm a big fan of the Beast Snagas. I really want to try a thing I learned painting up some of my models for Don't Look Back, where I actually put static grass onto a miniature and then it looks like fur once you've primed it. And speaking of Don't Look Back, I got a ton of painting done for Don't Look Back. Y'all will recognize Broccoli. No longer looks like Broccoli, although not quite done yet. I took the green out of her body and I added some epic basing bits, some branches. I just snapped them off of a tree and I glued them to her shoulders and added more foam that I painted green and then like did a little bit of airbrushing to blend it in. And I don't think she looks like Broccoli anymore. I think she's looking pretty good. There's a lot of paint on her at this point, which is kind of a problem because it's filling in kind of the subtle text, like bark texturing that's on her body. And also I've been trying to like also tone down the brightness with matte varnish, but then that's just adding more layers of paint. So she's looking a little smooth, but I'll figure it out. I'll add in some texturing, I think, with stippling for a final highlight, and then she will finally be done. What's really fun about painting stuff for Don't Look Back and just painting random models, I find, is that it's like I've come across new challenges that I don't necessarily know how to deal with. Like I can do a Space Marine 100 different ways because I have, but painting a tree lady, I guess I've painted a few tree ladies because I have a Sylvaneth army, but I painted them all one way with one recipe, where she was something new and really, really fun to paint. So I'm like 90% done with her. I'm 90% done with a lot of models right now, actually. It's kind of a problem. But the next model I painted was this Scarecrow dude. And he's fine. I think for this model, I was kind of coming up against the model itself is okay. Like, I think he looks good, but I think it's hard to do more with this model than what I did with it, which is he's kind of brown. The sickle is a little bit tricky to paint because it's so small. So I try to do some like non-metallic metal glazing and blending, but it does kind of just look like a little worm. But I'm decently happy with this guy. He'll have a fun time chasing the teenagers around the board. Don't Look Back is the game where you're recreating an 80s horror movie where you got the slasher versus the teens. And the slasher is actually controlled by AI or controlled by the game's rules. And you and your friends play as the teenagers running around the board trying to do actions and objectives while the terror is chasing you. But yeah, I really like the epic basing bits. They have this pack of not stairs, they have a pack of like boards that are all nailed together. And so I broke some apart and then made a little fence for this guy. And he is pretty good. He'll definitely scare some teens, but it's not my favorite model that I've painted yet for Don't Look Back. My favorite model might be this guy from Scooby-Doo. It is the Diver, and this model just worked out really well. I also painted him in like 2 hours. It was great. I listened to like 2 creepypastas and then the model was done. I really, really had a good time like blending and glazing on all of the details of his suit. It's just like I sprayed him green and then sprayed on a little bit of white and then just started glazing yellows. And then I even put Scorpion Green, the contrast paint from Games Workshop, which isn't really a contrast paint. When you look at the contrast paint range from Games Workshop, the only ones that I would say are contrast paint are the ones that look black in the bottle or like really dark brown. Those are the ones that are actually going to contrast. Anything that looks like a color like green or yellow or red, when you put it on a model, it's gonna look green or yellow or red. It's gonna pool a little bit in the recesses versus the raised areas, but it's not gonna do a ton. But if you throw it in your airbrush and you just kind of spray it in a circle around the model, it darkened his hands and his feet so that his chest is the brightest thing on the model. And then just a little dry brushing on the helmets. His helmet and belt buckle and boots are gold, but I actually base coated them in red. And I think it did something to really, like red and green are like opposite colors. And I think it really did something to make those elements super stand out from one another. But yeah, the Scooby-Doo villain. And he's like the most fun thing I've painted in a couple of weeks now. It's really, really silly, but really, really fun. I have to work on his base and then he will be ready for Don't Look Back. But I have one more miniature that I've almost finished. Psycho Killer! I just like this model. That's the great thing about Don't Look Back. Like usually I buy into a model range or I buy into a game and I have to like build an army list. But with Don't Look Back, I can just kind of troll the internet and just look at each model and be like, yeah, I'd paint that. And then add to cart and then I get to paint it. Look at that big old schnoz and the spooky eyes and the just like kind of weird like tux that he's wearing. His big Mickey Mouse fingers. Like, yeah, you don't want to let this guy get too close. He's really fun. I love his just big crop, curly blonde hair. Just a really fun little miniature. It took a while to get his clothing to look right. It's all contrast paint, but every time I would put on the contrast paint, I'd be like, too dark, airbrush, too light. Put on some more, too dark, airbrush a little bit more highlights, too light. It took a lot of back and forth to get his suit coat just right. But I think he's a really, really fun guy. we're gonna have to play a lot of Don't Look Back to get through all of these different killers that I'm making, but in the rulebook of Don't Look Back, you can actually make your own killers with their own stats and abilities and stuff. So really, all I need to do is like get some blank playing cards and Sharpie on all of their stats and stuff, and then we can like randomly pull. Because you don't know what killer you have when you first start the game. You can actually pick scenarios and then you do, but if you just pull randomly, it'd be really fun because like there's other things like the giant Wendigo, or you might just get Psycho Killer, or you might just get Scooby-Doo guy. It'll be really interesting, and they all have their different abilities and like their own different ways of killing the teens in game. So really, really excited. And all of these guys have just a little bit left to do. I think I was definitely moving on to the next thing a little bit too fast because I didn't do his base. I didn't paint his shoes. I didn't finish the base on Tree Lady. Like they all just need 20 more minutes on each model and then they'll actually be done. But I've been doing a really bad job of getting models finished. I've been doing good on my 40K, but on my other things, I've been doing a bad job. So I think I do need to spend like an evening just wrapping up each project, and then I get to take those and put them onto my models I painted this year's spreadsheet, because there's like 3 big joys for me when I'm working on a model. There's buying the model, and then there's when I'm done painting the model, and then when I get to put that model onto my spreadsheet and the number goes up. Those are like the 3 big joys for me when I'm painting a miniature. But you know what else is a big joy? That's right, our Patreon. This month, we have the mining colony, terrain, and vehicles. Utilitarian machines that are more than they appear, designed to ride across the landscape, firing stolen weapons, or tunneling underneath to lay traps. And the mine and containers make for thematic and useful terrain. The colony is ready to uprise. A really fun week of wargaming and painting. I've been having a ton of fun with Don't Look Back villains, but we're gonna be playing this weekend, and I haven't even assembled the teenagers that we actually play with. So I'm gonna have to really get the lead out and get the game ready to play. And as much fun as I'm having with Don't Look Back, I am falling behind slightly on my Drukhari army, so I got a lot of work to do. Thanks for watching.